Oh, we are live. Excellent. Good evening to the live stream. Welcome. It's going to be a short little live stream tonight. I'll probably be on for about an hour, hour and a half. Lots happened today. England have been set a record run chase by India in the third test at Trent Bridge. They've been set 521 to win the third test. That is the highest run chase in the history of Test cricket. Um, that is an insane run chase at Trent Bridge. On a wicket like that, in conditions as we've had the last few weeks. It'd be very, very interesting to see if England can even bat out a draw, because the way they batted in the first innings, they just did not look up to the conditions. I know they've lost Johnny Bairstow to a broken finger. Whether he'll be fit enough to bat tomorrow with some kind of strapping on his hand will be yet to be determined. But he was in a lot of pain as he left the field during the afternoon session. He looked seriously hurt. So that's going to be an interesting subplot. The way the Indian batsmen have batted, Kohli, Hardik Pandya, Pujara, they really have taken the test out of England's hands. I think England are struggling to hold on. They'll be lucky to get a draw. If they do draw it, India can't win the Test series, and England will retain the series. But it's a long order. But they've got 2 full days in which to get 521 runs, and they've made a decent start in their second innings. But they really need to score some runs quick in the opening session tomorrow. Put a bit of pressure on the Indian bowling attack, because Ashwin's looking hurt and Kohli's not fully fit as a fielder, so they can put a bit of pressure on them. But it all depends on the conditions. So we're hoping there's no rain showers, and the cloud cover isn't as thick and as dark, so there's more light and a bit brighter, and that could help the batting. It's a 50-50 pitch. The bowlers have been on top in this test, and the Indian batsmen have really, especially in the second innings when the ball was moving all over the place, really played very, very well. In football news, Kenny Miller and Livingston have parted company. I did a video on that earlier tonight, by mutual consent. When Livingston hired him as manager 7 weeks ago, they agreed to him being player manager for the season. So it's a very interesting turn of events, considering that he gave a very lengthy interview to the BBC on Football Focus on Saturday, just before their League Cup tie evening. So it's very interesting that the turn of events at Livingston, they obviously were happy for him to be player manager at that point. The meeting stemmed around the fact that they wanted him to go into full-time management. Kenny Miller still wants to play. He still feels he can give something back to the game. So that's very interesting. They're a newly promoted club. They play St Mirren the weekend, the other promoted club. That's very important. They need to get a win there. They haven't played too bad under Kenny Miller this season. So it's interesting that Livingston and the board and the ownership have decided to take this move so swiftly. Yes, they're out of the Scottish League Cup, but I think Premier League survival in Scotland would be their priority this year. It's been a 12-year absence from the top flight for Livingston. They cannot afford relegation. I think that would be devastating for the club financially, considering they have had financial problems in the last 12 years. And in rugby news, Danny Cipriani has been fined internally by Gloucester £2,000. They've also ordered him to do youth community coaching as well as part of his punishment. And there's been a massive spat between Gloucester and the RFU over how they discipline the player, because the RFU said they're happy for Gloucester to discipline Cipriani how they see fit, but they're also opening their own internal investigation against him, even though he was with Gloucester teammates at the time and was with Gloucester, wasn't with England. So they're now sort of interfering in a disciplinary process by the club. So there's been an open war of words between the Premiership club in Gloucester and the RFU over the weekend. So that could be very interesting how that affects Cipriani's Test career, because there are those saying that he is now done as a Test player. And with the amount of off-field indiscretions he's had over the last 10 years, he is running out of chances. He's been given every opportunity to turn his off-field antics around and become a more model professional. So there's a lot hanging in the balance for Cipriani. Gloucester are not terminate his contract. They want to keep him there. They need a creative 10. So in that sense, they can't afford to terminate his contract with the season starting in just over a week and a half, 2 weeks' time. So they're in a difficult position, but they've handled it, I think, reasonably well and professionally. He was very, very lucky to get away with just a fine. I think because he pled guilty to the charges in court, I think that helped his position. He was very, very quick to release a statement to the press, showing remorse. Um, so he's in a tricky situation. But I'm now open to take questions. I just thought I'll give a quick overview of what's happened today in the sport. Obviously, Crystal Palace are currently playing Liverpool at Selhurst Park, so that's going to be interesting. And obviously, the NHL, there's been no movement on Eric Carlson still. Uh, Ottawa Senators fans are still waiting to see what happens to Eric Carlson and whether he stays as their captain and as a Senator for next season, or he moves. So there are some very interesting sporting things happening at the moment. But yes, no movement on Eric Carlson in the NHL. That's the big hockey story, really, is it? There is no story there. There were rumours of a trade on a 3-4 way trade between the Rangers, the Senators, the Stars, and a few other teams to make movement and make space for Eric Carlson. Nothing's happened there. So let's see what questions people have. Claudio Bravo, and I haven't heard about Claudio Bravo. I haven't, I've been trying to follow the test match all day at work and try and get away with using my phone at work. So, but I know that Liverpool are 1-0 up, and James Milner scored the penalty. There was a foul on Mo Salah in the box. Could it be a dive? I don't know. I was watching another live stream on another channel that I follow. So I haven't had anything on Claudio Bravo myself, but I'm sure you're probably going to tell me. It is difficult to keep up. Apparently not interested in training for the rest of the season. I have noticed this about several clubs. A lot of players are going down early on this season. Claudio Bravo didn't play at the World Cup because Chile didn't qualify. So he's had a longer summer holiday than a lot of his teammates will. But De Bruyne getting injured in training as well. There's been injuries in Scotland on the plastic pitches. So Stephen Gerrard's been very critical of the artificial surfaces on some of the Scottish grounds because of injuries to some of his players. Obviously, anytime there's an injury in training, it's not what you want. And I don't know what it is about some clubs, but they seem to have more injuries than others. I think Man City were very, very lucky last season. I will say that they were very, very lucky in not having many injuries to players, but already they've lost De Bruyne. If they've lost Claudio Bravo, not the end of the world. He's not the starter anymore. He's not the main man. So that's Ederson now. So they haven't lost their main keeper, which is a start. But it's not news you want to have should Ederson have an injury or be unwell at any point. You do want to have your backup goalie to be ready. Your second string goalkeeper to be ready to step in, and that's a worry that now that's 2 injuries in training for City players. So that says to me something going on in training that isn't right. But bearing in mind the weather conditions we've had this summer, it's been very, very dry. Some of the pitches, even though it's rained a bit, still very, very hard because the groundwater levels aren't high enough. So it could be a very firm pitch. Goalkeepers tend to have shoulder and hip injuries. I know I had one when I was playing in goal. So he's probably had a contact injury when he's doing goalkeeping practice, landed awkwardly on his back or his shoulder. But some clubs seem to have worse luck with injuries than others. Arsenal are renowned for having a lot of injuries in their squad. But that's 2 Man City players in the space of a week with serious injuries. What's more important is how long it takes for Kevin De Bruyne to get fit and to get fit enough to train and then get back in the side, because even though they won 6-1 against Huddersfield, that wasn't a good Huddersfield side. That wasn't a good Huddersfield performance. Other key players stepped up, like Silva and Aguero. Long term, without De Bruyne in midfield, that could be an issue for them. But I think this will test them. Having these injuries early on in the season will test them. They didn't have these injuries at the start of last season. They were able to get on that long winning run, an undefeated run that went on for quite some time. At one point, people thought they were going to go the whole season unbeaten. And they were in contention for 4 trophies at one point. I did obviously a video on the Premier League records. Do Man City break 100 points again? It's possible. I think Liverpool can also do it as well with some of the strike power they have. It'll be interesting to see how Man City, when they come up against tougher opposition, because Huddersfield just weren't at the races at the weekend. So we'll have to see, how they change their midfield around a little bit and try and rotate midfielders and try and carry the workload across more. Because De Bruyne, his passing is key, his movement is key, and some of his driving runs are key. And he does bring other midfielders and other forwards into play with his movement and the way he holds up the ball and moves the ball. But it is interesting. But that's not a problem. Hello again. How's the Dutch league going? But another problem is until this season, the transfer window was open later. So if an injury like this happened, a club could get a transfer in to cover that injury. So if it was a goalkeeping injury to your starting goalkeeper, the transfer window was open till the end of August. Now it shuts before the beginning of the season. So this is the downside to shutting the transfer window early for English clubs, because if you go north the border to Scotland, they can still complete transfers for another week. So I understand why the Premier League brought the transfer window forward and closed it earlier, but there are some negatives to it because clubs over the last however long had the transfer window when it used to be transfers all year round. Yes, but I think that's for loaning out players to the lower leagues. It's a complicated system. I think it needs to be a universal system across Europe where they have every league has the same cut-off point. The Scottish transfer window in January shuts an hour later than the English transfer window as well, which again is bizarre. Personally, I think all the European leagues, I think UEFA need to get all the European leagues around the table and agree on a set time and set date to unify when the transfer window opens and closes for both the winter transfer window and the summer transfer window. Because otherwise incidents like this happen, and in another league they can continue to buy and sell players. So if in Scotland, for example, I don't know, Craig Gordon at Celtic breaks his leg, they need a goalkeeper because the second string goalkeeper's gone in goal, but they still need another goalkeeper as cover. They can still sign a player from an English club, but the English club can't sign the player from the Scottish club, if you get what I mean, and that's an issue. Plus, the Championship transfer window is still open as well. It's just the Premier League have brought the window open forward. But I think that's where UEFA need to come in and get all the federations, all the governing bodies of like the FA, the Scottish FA, the French FA, the Spanish Federation, the Italians, the Germans, all the major nations round the table and say, look, we need to clarify when the transfer window opens and closes and have it the same day and the same time for all leagues. And it makes it a more fair system, because some clubs can still make those changes and still make those additions to their squad that the English Premier League clubs now can't. To continue about football briefly, Tottenham, their stadium may not be ready for up to 6 months. They've really mucked up the redevelopment of White Hart Lane. It was going really smoothly until the beginning of the summer, and then Daniel Levy came out and said we may be delayed by a few weeks. It's now turned into a few months, and it could turn to half a year. The NFL game they were meant to host there has now been moved, so they can't play that game at Wembley. Man City's is the Man City league game that's a big concern. They want to obviously rearrange that fixture. I do have friends and subscribers who follow Scottish football. There's quite a few of them. Scottish football itself is not as competitive as it was 20 years ago. I've done a video on that a few months back. The issue with Scottish football is partly the TV rights and partly the lack of funding for clubs and financial difficulties that go alongside the TV rights. Scottish football, they haven't qualified for a major tournament for 20 years. They haven't, developed enough quality players in the last 20 years. There are a lot of Scottish football players. I had that there is no doubt, but not enough of them of the highest quality to make it at the highest level. They do have a lot of good managers, though. A lot of good managers are Scottish at the moment in British football, and they're scattered around the Scottish League and the Anglo Welsh League as well. The issue is, though, they're from the last generation of good Scottish players. There isn't that up and coming um, talent pool. There's not enough young Scottish players coming through academies, breaking into first teams who are actually at an elite level. They're decent. They're not. They're not good. They're just decent. They need to take that. There's an issue with it with the structures of the Scottish FA, the Scottish national side, both men and women's, the youth setup in the Scottish national system. Um, the I think they should combine the Scottish Championship and the Scottish Premier League into a bigger league. That might help. Possibly moving the league to a summer league might help because they're trying to compete at the same time with the Premier League and the European leagues for TV time. So moving it to a summer league may help Scottish football. So it is one of them. Um, it's a difficult, it's a complex situation in Scotland because there's 3 or 4 big clubs, and then there's a lot of average clubs, and then there's a lot of clubs that really do struggle on a daily basis to keep running. The last 10 years for Scottish football have really been laced with financial difficulties. Rangers, Gretna, Dumbarton, Dunfermline, Livingston, Motherwell have had a few wobbles. Both Dundee clubs have gone up and down and now the Premier League. There have been issues with a lot of clubs in Scottish football having money problems in the last decade, and that's partly to do with the TV deal collapsing with Setanta, formerly an Irish-based subscription sports channel that went bust, and that had knock-on effects that last to this day that are still having an effect on the Scottish clubs now. When I go to high school matches, do I join the chants? Yes. Not all of them, but I come up with a few of my own. Some of them are quite funny. Um, I do like watching the game though, and I have come up with a few chants myself. I came up with the 12 Days of Hockey song for Christmas with my mate, and we had it was quite funny. I've come up with a few little chants and a bit of chirping. I don't think I could tell them on camera because there's a few rude ones, but I do enjoy watching it. I just love I like a good atmosphere. And because British ice rinks aren't that big, when you pack them out with 1 or 2 thousand people, because they're not as big as other rinks overseas, the atmosphere is quite good. I'm honestly not gonna try and sing on camera. And I don't want to swear on camera either because if I'm honest, that can get me in a little bit of trouble with the old YouTube censors. So I'm going to keep this chat as clean as possible. Yes, the Dutch league is very similar to the Scottish league, except the Dutch Eredivisie is a bigger league. It has more teams in it, so therefore it's a bit more competitive because you have more talent pool. Each club only plays each other twice rather than 4 times. It's more competitive. The Dutch league has declined in the last 15, 20 years, but it is far more competitive than the Scottish league because there's more teams in it. There's more chance of upsetting a big club because the medium-sized clubs do have a chance, and they do develop good players in Holland. Even though the league is not as good as it was, the Ajax and Feyenoord and PSV system, the PSV Eindhoven and AZ Alkmaar, they do produce a lot of good Dutch players are coming through. It's the fact that the national side and some of the tactics employed by some of the Dutch coaches haven't adapted well with modern football. I think Van Gaal was dated. You got Dick Advocaat. You've had, there's a lot of good Dutch managers, and there's a lot of good Dutch players. But they've had a golden generation. They didn't qualify for the World Cup this year. So the Dutch Federation, much like the German Federation 18 years ago, they need to go and look at why, when they are developing players, the Dutch clubs can't keep hold of them. They've got to look at why the Dutch league has declined. They have to work out a way that the Dutch national side can get back to where they were, because there have been some great Dutch teams in the last 20, 30, 40 years. Started with Cruyff and carried on with players like Overmars and Bergkamp and the De Boer brothers and Van der Sar in goal, and it's carried on until recently. And the current group of Dutch players isn't quite as good as teams before them. They're still a great footballing nation and a footballing powerhouse. They just need to assess what's going wrong and be pragmatic about it, and make the right decisions when it comes to player development and league development, because the league seriously does need to look at why it's not as competitive in the Champions League, for example. As a league itself, it is competitive, but when it plays in the European competitions, the teams that qualify for the Champions League are not as good as they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. What team do I hate the most in the NIHL? Because we only had the one season so far where the old English Premier teams went down and joined in that league. I haven't really developed a dislike for a team yet. I wouldn't say I hate a team. I think having a decent, healthy rivalry with your rivals is good. I haven't developed a severe dislike. There are certain players I don't like. There are certain players that I dislike um, in the league, but I wouldn't say I severely dislike a team. I possibly think the worst, possibly Romford at a push. They're obviously London the last few years. I think Romford at a push, but um, at this current point in time, I don't really hate a team. I think I just enjoy the sport, and the players don't get paid that much. So I do enjoy the sport. You've got to understand that players don't get paid a hell of a lot of money to play at that level. They play for the love of the sport and the hope that they might get to the elite league and then get spotted by a bigger European league, or as in Liam Kirk's case, get drafted by the NHL, or in Ben O'Connor's case, go to the Swedish Hockey League and improve their career and develop. I think possibly Invicta. Invicta had a bad reputation last year for some really dirty play. Don't get me wrong. I love the physical play and the more, and I do like a bit of an old punch up here and then, and a bit of argy bargy, but because we didn't play Telford last year, because they're obviously in Division 1 North now, we don't have that rivalry anymore. I think the two teams I dislike the most are probably the Raiders and the Dynamos Invicta. The Raiders, I think it was heated because we were very close in the league, and Invicta were probably the dirtiest team in the league. If I'm brutally honest, I felt there was a lot of cheap shots between both sides. Streatham as well. I think I did enjoy the away day there. The Streatham fans are actually good banter, but on the ice it's a rivalry. In years past, yes, Telford definitely rivals. They were one of the best teams in the second tier of English ice hockey. They still are. It's there is rumours that the former English Premier League teams plus a select couple of others will form a second tier again because they can afford to do so. But we have to see how this season goes and what happens at the end of this season. And we just have to get through this season first. But I'm looking forward to pre-season. The Swindon double header is in 2 weeks' time. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to. Uh, I'm looking forward to um, watching one of those games. I can't watch the Swindon home game, but I'm looking forward to the Bracknell home game. But no, it's interesting. When I was younger, yes, I would have responded with, "Oh, I dislike this team intensely." Now that I've got older and I've watched a lot more sport, and I have more of an appreciation for the fact that you need a healthy rivalry with your rival teams, but at the same time, you've got to respect them because it's a privilege to play, to be actually good enough to play for any side at any level. It's not a right. And I've supported my team through thick and thin over the last 25 years. I've seen the good times. I've seen some very, very bad times. And last season was a decent season by my team. I know your team, Basingstoke, did really, really well last year, but the ice rink issues and where they're going to be playing in a couple of years' time in the future isn't looking bright. And I feel sad about that because even though they're rivals and there's a heated rivalry there and there's a history between my team and your team, I think the sport in this country would be worse off without the Basingstoke Bison in it than without it. I think that's an issue. Coming back as well. Yeah, as I was saying about Dutch football earlier, yes, they have produced some brilliant players over the last 20, 30 years. Van Basten in the 80s. Then you've obviously had, yes, you've had Nistelrooys, your Jaap Stams, your Van der Sars, your De Boer brothers, Overmars. I think Bergkamp, I think, is possibly the best Dutch player of the modern era, even though he only had a right foot. Um, I don't know what the issue is with Dutch football. There is an issue with youth development. They are still creating some really good young players. Depay, he's hit and miss. I'm going to be jury's out on him. Inconsistent, exceptionally skillful, but exceptionally inconsistent. I think part of the problem is yes, the the struggles of Dutch sides in the Champions League and the Europa League in the last 5-10 years are highlighting the issue that the Dutch league itself is still a good standard. It's still a damn good league. It's just not as good as it was, and there has to be a reason why. And it comes down to various reasons why. But the Dutch Federation have to look at that and they have to understand, right, why were we good in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and why are we not as good now? Why have teams in the past won the Champions League, won the old UEFA Cup Winners' Cup, done well in the Europa League in years past? Why are they not doing it now? They're in a strong, healthier position than Scottish football. They are in a far stronger position than Scotland are. But they still need to look at why their league isn't back where it could be in the top leagues in Europe. And that takes a lot of soul searching through the federation and the Dutch clubs. The top two tiers of Dutch football need to really have some soul searching and look at themselves and get around a table and work out a solution to make the league better. I mean, yeah, Patrick Kluivert's son is decent. He's got some developing to do, both physically and on the footballing side. But that's not to say he won't be a really, really good player, like his father. But some kids are better than their parents when it comes to sport. Others aren't so good, but they're still decent. It's like Cruyff's son, Jordi Cruyff, played in the UEFA Cup final for Deportivo Alves, and that was the highlight of his career. He wasn't a bad player. He just wasn't as good as his father. But here's another issue. A lot of these good young Dutch players aren't playing their football in Holland. They're playing it outside of Holland because they want to play at a better level. So Dutch football needs to try and keep hold of its young players a bit longer. and develop them into a Dutch style. This is why Spain have become so good over the last decade, is because they kept hold of a lot of their star players for a lot longer, and then they got sold by their clubs. This is why the Germans have been so good. They kept hold of a lot of the young German players for a lot longer at their clubs before they were sold across Europe, and they came up with an identity. This is why the Italians won the World Cup in 2006, is because the best Italian players played in Italy. And they had a bit more of a team unity. I think the Dutch, because of the slow decline of Dutch football, it's not as rapid as Scotland. Um, a lot of their talent is scattered all over Europe, and they all play in different systems and different footballing styles and different footballing philosophies, and there isn't a Dutch way anymore. The Dutch way, which was total football, has been proven to be a flawed system. It lost 2 World Cup finals and was hammered in one of them. But there isn't a Dutch identity when it comes to the national side, because the best players play all over Europe, and they're not really centralised in one league. They're all over all the leagues, and it's kind of you want to try and have an identity and a team identity, and they don't quite have that. And at the same time, a lot of these young players coming through are not at the same level of previous squads and previous generations of Dutch players. But it's a difficult one to put a finger on why a particular country struggles at something or something else. The best way to solve that kind of problem is, to get the federation and the big clubs in Holland around a table and work out a solution. Because Ajax's youth system is absolutely amazing. They have a very, very good youth system at Ajax that has regularly produced world-class players for 50 years. It just so happens that not enough of the Dutch clubs have decent enough youth systems anymore. There needs to be an investment, be it from the federation itself or the Dutch government, into youth football more, with the clubs to improve their youth systems, and to also break the stranglehold by some of the big Dutch clubs and try and get a lesser club winning a title or two, because that will shake things up and actually make it more competitive. But no, there's a lot of interesting things going on in sport. I mean, a lot of the questions have been about football tonight, and I completely understand that, because it's the biggest sport in the world. Obviously, there are issues within football. The transfer window is the biggest argument you could have, and the fact the English Premier League is the only league to shut it when the season starts in that country. All the other European leagues shut it at the end of August. So the other European leagues, all of them, their window will shut in 11 days' time, and that's where UEFA needs to step in and come up with a unified transfer window opening and closing date with all the leagues, where it opens and closes at the same time and it's fair for all. But also, I've been asked the question about predicting the finishing position of the Premier League this season. I'm not even going to try and predict. I would say the top two will be Liverpool and Man City, and the way it looks, for me, that's a 50-50 call whether one or the other wins the league. That's the only thing I'll be predicting, is those two will be the top two. In what order, I don't know. We can speculate on what teams will get relegated. I think Cardiff and Huddersfield will be in the bottom two. The third team, I couldn't tell you. All three promoted teams could get relegated. All three promoted teams could stay up. I think Cardiff are the weakest three promoted sides. I think they're the most likely to get relegated. I think Huddersfield haven't started well the season at all. They've really, really struggled out the gate. I think they're going to have a tough season. I think Southampton will be okay. I think Southampton will be okay. I think Mark Hughes has got that steel about him. Obviously, it didn't work out at Stoke, but there's so many things wrong with Stoke. We could discuss that to death. I think Southampton will be okay. I think Wolves or Fulham or both may have overspent, and they can't afford that, and they can't afford to get relegated. That'd be catastrophic for both clubs. Wolves have issues with financial fair play from their time in the Championship. Fulham, the issue with Fulham is their owner wants to buy Wembley, and that for me is a conflict of interest. I'm not sure about Newcastle. Newcastle could get relegated, or they could finish top half table. Newcastle are a very unpredictable club, and it's to do with the owner, Mike Ashley. They regularly don't invest correctly in the transfer market. They've lost some of their better players. Rafa Benitez, his future is always uncertain. The fact he's stuck around this long with the club amazes me. Excuse me. I think Newcastle is the ownership that is a real head scratcher. Brighton, I think, will be okay. I think that whenever Man United will give them some confidence, and it was a very convincing win against Man United. They really took them to the cleaners in a very explosive spell. And this is a Man United side with David De Gea in goal, one of the world's best goalkeepers. But yeah, Man United have a lot of problems. I think part of that is to do with the board and Mourinho. They've clearly publicly fallen out. They very clearly are not on the best of terms. They did very little transfer business. They got Fred, and that was about it. So their transfer business was poor. It was better than Tottenham's because Tottenham did none. I think Tottenham may be regretting that slightly, not investing. Even though they've had a very, very good start, I think it's a long season. You've got Champions League, League Cup, FA Cup, and the league itself. I think United and Tottenham may regret their lack of transfer activity. Some clubs, I think, did too much. I think that's Wolves and Fulham. They've spent a lot of money. And if they do get relegated, they're in trouble. We could go through every single club in the Premier League, and I could basically say there's only two clubs that I think, on paper, will be in the top two. Hello. For me, there's only two clubs in England that will be definitely in the top two, and that is Liverpool and Man City. I think Tottenham, third place. Chelsea are going through a transition period. Arsenal are going through a transition period. Man United, I don't know what's going on there. I think Mourinho, I don't think he's going to be there much longer. There are rumours that Zidane will come in and replace him. The upcoming, the Scottish Premier League. Well, obviously Kenny Miller has parted ways with Livingston. Celtic have had a iffy start to the season. Hearts and Rangers and Aberdeen have started the season really, really well. Hibs haven't quite strengthened enough. I think they're going to make top six. I think Kilmarnock will be floating around top six as well. And that's the top 6-7 clubs. Livingston, I don't understand the U-turn on the Kenny Miller decision, because when Kenny Miller was hired, the ownership and the board were very happy with him being a player manager. 7 weeks later, they're not happy with him being player manager. They want him full-time manager. He hasn't done a bad job with limited resources. And for a promoted club to be chopping its manager's head off after 7 weeks and already changing that manager, that's not a club that's looking in a good position. I think there's a lot of decisions at Livingston that need looking at. But yeah, Celtic with their wobbly start, the Boyata issue. Now this is something that I think is disrupting that dressing room at Celtic, is the Boyata contract. It doesn't matter if you're a Rangers fan, a Celtic fan, Aberdeen. If you're a Scottish football fan, the UEFA coefficient, and because here's the thing with Celtic, because their failure to get into the Champions League group stage and the UEFA coefficient, and this is where the coefficient needs adjusting, and it's a flawed system, because you've got two clubs that are in Europa League qualifying at the start of the season, and that was Rangers and Aberdeen, and Celtic were in Champions League. Celtic have failed to get to the Champions League. They're now back into Europa League qualifying, which means Scotland could have 3 teams in the Europa League group stages. From a league of 12 teams, that's a third of the league has made it into the Europa League. So of that, and that's to do with the UEFA coefficient. Because Celtic have failed to qualify, that affects what happens, next year for European qualification on whoever wins the league. So it could not be Celtic. Celtic may finish 5th. They may have a disastrous season, and Aberdeen or or Hearts or Rangers or Kilmarnock or Hibs could do really well, but they can't qualify for Champions League because Celtic have fluffed it. But here's another thing: Celtic regularly qualify for the Champions League and then get battered in the group stage, which does nothing again for the coefficient. Um, and I don't know, Celtic have had a wobble. Rangers have had a good start, and momentum is a good thing. And yes, I understand that they haven't played necessarily the toughest opposition yet. I think the draw against Aberdeen, I think, was the toughest game so far. Hearts and Hibs are going to be tough games. Um, so it's going to be an interesting season. I don't think Celtic are going to run away with the league this year. I think Brendan Rodgers is overrated as a manager because the league is very uncompetitive, or has been. If this league is more competitive this year, partly because of Celtic's failures in the transfer market and partly because of their failures in the Champions League, that's good for the domestic side of it. It's when the clubs get into Europe that they have no hope. And it doesn't look good when you regularly qualify for the Champions League or Europa League and get walloped every game. That's basically Celtic for the last couple of years. They get into the Champions League and get an absolute hiding. Um, and that can't be good for the league in Scotland or the sport in Scotland when their teams qualify, or their champions qualify for the Champions League and get hammered in every game and look really, really like a pub team. That's basically, and their fans couldn't behave in Europe. They were regularly in trouble for fan disorder, um, abusive chanting, racist chanting, sectarian chanting, fan disorder with arrests, pitch invasions. It's not a good advert for Scottish football when the fans can't behave. And that goes for Rangers as well. That also goes for Rangers as well. I do think Rodgers, as a manager, when he was at Liverpool, didn't hack it. When he was at Swansea, at a club with less expectation, he did rather well. When he went to Liverpool, they always expect, and he didn't cope well with that. But he goes to a less competitive league in Scotland. Yes, he's done very well with Celtic. He's made sure he's kept Celtic at number one. That's the board's message to him is win, and he's done that. But he can't do anything in Europe with them. Even if they were to make it out of the group stage and make it to the first knockout stage, I think that would be a good thing for the coefficient and Celtic itself. And he can't do that. Um, uh, it doesn't help though when there is a public spat between Brendan Rodgers, or alleged public spat between Rodgers and Celtic ownership. It also doesn't look good when Celtic have spent a lot of money on updating their PA system and haven't sorted out Boyata's contract. That's the thing that's rumbling on at the moment is that contract, whether this player stays or goes, and their lack of activity in the transfer market, getting one or two players in. Gerrard has had a very good start to management, and we have to give him that kind of respect. But it's the media that are overinflating Gerrard's achievement. It's his first managerial job. He's not going to win he's not going to work miracles overnight. I think he has done well in how he's recruited players. He has done well building that squad under his ideals. What happened to Graham Murty was a bit farcical. What happened to Kakahina was a bit farcical. The previous two managers, it seemed there was some kind of breakdown between them and the board. I think Rangers fans sometimes don't keep their feet on the ground. They get delusions of grandeur. I understand Rangers are the most successful club in Scottish history. I'm not going to knock Rangers for that, but the club is not the club it was. The club is in a different place, and there's still concerns about finances off the field, and that's not going away, and that's an issue. But they're not the only club in Scotland with financial problems or concerns about finances. Let's keep it that way. But if the gap to Celtic closes or another team can win the league this season, that would probably be the best thing for Scottish football. The failures in Europe don't help, but I think it's time that another team won. Not because, actually, I'm personally, I'm a bit bored of Celtic and Rangers winning all the time. It would be nice to see Aberdeen win it again, as I like Aberdeen. But Scottish football needs another team to win the league. It needs it. It's needed it for a good 20 years, and that unfortunately hasn't happened. I think Aberdeen are probably the most likely to take that next step. and go top, and probably the most likely team to unseat Celtic. But even then, Aberdeen are the third most successful team in Scottish football. So it does need a different name at the top of the table. If that could be Hearts, Hibs, Kilmarnock, that would probably Kilmarnock's a push, but Hearts or Hibs could also do it, I think. But that's what Scottish football needs. It desperately needs a new name on the Scottish Premiership trophy, or a name that hasn't been on there for a long time. That's what needs to happen in order for the sport north of the border to have a rebirth, because it's not in a good place right now. Not, I mean, I love talking about Scottish football with you guys. You know, I love you Scottish subscribers, because the banter you have is funny, enjoyable, and it's a bit of a laugh. But in all seriousness, Scottish football needs a new name on that trophy. It needs a Leicester City type story. It needs a Blackburn Rovers type story, where the stranglehold by a few clubs is broken by, you know. But it's the way the league is. The league is too small. That's why outside the top 5 or 6, half the table is terrified of relegation from day one. It does need to merge with the Championship, because then you're only getting 2 or 3 teams relegated rather than half the league threatened with it. It will make the league more competitive. You just got to look at every other league that has more than 18 teams. Every other league, major league in Europe, has about 18 teams or more in it. And they're far more competitive. They're far more fun to watch. It's more open. Any team can beat anyone on any given day. When you've got such a small league and such a small player base, it's not as good watching. There's less depth. There's less variation. The teams play each other far too regularly. So those derby matches actually sort of lose their appeal. Instead of being like twice a season minimum, they're like minimum of 4 times a season. Caxahina, yeah, I think Caxahina and Murty, both of them, the board didn't really give them a hope in hell. Um, I think the running of Rangers for a long time, for about 20 years, has not been good at all. Because I didn't see enough of Scottish football until I started doing this channel. I don't really have enough. How do I put it? Because until I did this channel, I wasn't really as interested in Scottish football. I will be honest. Until this channel started up, my interest in Scottish football had declined to the point where I would check the scores on Final Score or the internet, catch the odd highlights on the internet, and that was about it. And that's the issue with Scottish football. It's not selling itself outside of Scotland very well to a wider audience. It just isn't doing it. And there's many reasons for that. It's just not advertising itself properly abroad, outside of Scotland. My thoughts on him, I think the way the whole thing was handled was pretty grubby. I think, yeah, his record wasn't great, but Rangers aren't the team they were 20 years ago, 10 years ago. There's too much that's happened to Rangers on and off the field. They're not the team they were. A large minority of the fan base don't live in reality when it comes to their club. They got delusions of grandeur. They were terrible to Graham Murty, and Murty did sort of lose their respect. But the Rangers fan base, at times, there's a proportion of it that is absolutely feral, and it's the same with any football club. There's always that minority that are on the negative side of things. I think he was given a harsh deal. I think Graham Murty did his best with what was left over, the mess that was left over. He was treated pretty shoddily as well. And Gerrard, okay, he's in there. He's been given the backing by the board that the previous 2 weren't, so that doesn't look good on the board side of things. He has put together a decent squad. They've had a decent start, a good start, and team unity and momentum count for something, and passion can sometimes trump skill. He's obviously got them all believing in each other and working together, and that's, I think, something that previous Rangers managers haven't. The board and the ownership, I still have concerns about going forward. and it would be wrong of me to say anything further. I don't know. I mean, there's plenty about Scottish football I don't know, and there's plenty about the situation and the ins and outs that we as fans are not necessarily party to. We're not insiders. We don't know the full ins and outs. More of that will come out in time. More of that will come out in time. I know that. My thoughts on LeBron James. His contract is massive. That is a lot of money. I know the NBA does have a lot of money in the league. I know. Um, I think the Lakers are trying to form a fantasy team because it's LA, but LA can financially, as a city, support um, so many sporting franchises. Uh, Cavaliers, that's one less ego in the dressing room. I think sometimes in sport you do need egos, but not that big. LeBron James has got a massive ego. I think that his the failures in the playoffs, his ego overshadowed what the Cavaliers had a great season. I think they'll probably cope pretty well without it. I think LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, they're not the players they were 10 years ago. They're older. Any a injury does them because of how old they are now. A serious injury does them, and that's their career on the line. But it's a lot of money. I did a video on it. That is a hell of a lot of money. Uh, his contract is worth more than the NHL salary cap. That is a lot of money he's on over a 4-year period. He's getting paid more than any NHL player. The NHL salary cap is around $18 million. He's getting paid more than that, and that's one player. That's where I do think some sports do overpay their players or their athletes. That's team sports. We're not talking about individual sports like tennis where you rely on prize money. Certain leagues, the NFL and the NBA, do overpay, and same with Major League Baseball. Same with the English Premier League in our football, which you would call soccer. Some sports and some leagues do overpay. Some of the contracts are obscene amounts of money, and I think yes, what he's done in the game, he is a very very talented player. But Michael Jordan, his merchandise, even though Michael Jordan's been retired for over a decade, still outsells LeBron James. Michael Jordan's been retired for nearly 20 years. His merchandise is still outselling LeBron James's merchandise, which says how much of a popular player he is and how divisive LeBron James is. When a player who hasn't played or competitively for 2 decades, his Air Maxes, his Nike Airs are outselling LeBron James's merchandise. That tells you something about what some people think on LeBron James and players like Kobe Bryant. I think the Lakers, they are trying to form a dream team like the Chicago Bulls, and they're trying to bring back, the title. They're trying to form a dream team of their own. They're trying to relive old memories. It could backfire on them, bringing in an aging star like that. It happens regularly in sport. You sign a big name player, and you're going by his name and reputation, not by how old he is now and how long he's got left. Oh yeah, no. Rupert Murdoch is also completely destroying cricket in England. I know everyone on here is a cricket fan, but he's managed to suck the life out of cricket and he's killing that. He's destroying golf. He's buggered rugby league because rugby league without it being on Sky is dead. It's too reliant on the Sky money. Rugby union is now more reliant on BT, but BT are going down the crapper, so rugby union's in a lot of trouble. He's absolutely dismantled so many sports. He holds them hostage. The Rupert Murdoch TV empire is going to collapse as soon as he dies, and he will soon because he's frigging ancient. When Rupert Murdoch passes away, so many professional sports are in such deep, deep trouble. The only professional sport in the UK that is on free to wear for a whole season now is the Elite League Ice Hockey because they signed a deal with Premier Sports with their free sports channel to have all the games shown live and free to wear, and that is a direct response to the sport becoming more successful internationally. Exactly the opposite of what every other sport in this country has done is a sport that gets more popular again. Instead of putting it on pay-per-view TV only, They did it free to air TV only. They went, no, we're not selling completely out. We need to grow the game. That's one problem with Scottish football is you got to look at the TV companies and what packages they buy. You could say the collapse of ITV Sport and then followed that up 8 years later with the collapse of Setanta has also killed Scottish football to a point. The Setanta collapse really gutted Scottish football at a time when the financial crisis was just starting. The collapse of Setanta killed Gretna, damn near killed Livingston, damn near killed Rangers, damn near killed Dunfermline, Dumbarton. I could list off a host of clubs in Scotland that because Setanta collapsed and Sky were not willing to buy up all the packages of Scottish football, damn near killed them. But it is what it is. I think Rupert Murdoch he's just a grubby bastard. That's what I'm going to say. Rupert Murdoch, he is a grubby bastard. His media companies are filth. They are, and they are completely destroying and holding sport ransom, not only in this country but across Europe to ransom. They have sport across the Western world by the nuts, and all he's got to do is go, I don't like this league chairman or this sports chairman. I'm gonna pull the plug, and he could do that, and he could destroy it. He's also the reason why we had the Super League wars in Australia when it came to rugby league. He damn near killed rugby league in Australia. He brought rugby league to its knees. Yeah, who wants to take their I don't mind occasionally watching sport in the pub. I really don't. I don't mind occasionally. There was an incident last year where I was with a friend, my mate Sam, and we were going to an ice hockey game in London. And because we'd left with plenty of time to spare, we were able to watch a bit of rugby in the pub by the ice rink in Streatham in South London. We couldn't watch all the game, but we watched a fair bit of it. And my mate Sam isn't so clued up on rugby, so because the sound was off, I could basically explain to him what was going on without the commentators annoying us. And I was basically explaining to him. And thankfully, the pub wasn't busy, which was great. And then the stupid barman turned it off because there was a birthday party and they wanted to have MTV on for some obscene reason, which boggled belief. But sometimes you can't enjoy it because you've got 200-300 pissheads shouting and screaming, and some of them. And if you've got kids with you, you've got these idiots screaming obscenities, and some of it can be racist and homophobic. And you might have your little brother with you, or your son, or your daughter, or your little sister, or whatever, and you got to listen to that, and that puts people off. But yes, a lot of people do have to go down a sleazy pub to watch the sport, and that's not right. For me, it's a proven fact. They've actually got the facts and figures. Sport grows more when it's freely accessible. Every single sport and pay-per-view sports has had declining viewership figures, and the ticket price at the stadium is going up. The whole reason behind the whole pay-per-view sport agreement with Rupert Murdoch and the British sporting establishment, shall we say, he almost killed British ice hockey in 2003 when he pulled the plug. Honestly, he almost killed British ice hockey. They had the rights to the old Super League back in '96, and it was on BBC and Sky. It was on both free-to-air and pay-per-view, depending on the game. And in 2003, he was like, "No, I can't bother with this anymore. I'm not making enough money. I'm putting the plug." And then British ice hockey was in the crappers. And thankfully, Premier Sports have released their free sports channel, and they've seen the success of the men's national side. Well, yeah, we'll have you on a free-to-air channel. There's clearly an interest in the UK for this sport. We're trying to grow it. We've got young players now getting drafted by the NHL. Let's grow the sport, and they've done it in the right way. Rupert Murdoch, though, part of the idea behind Sky Sports and what they sold us, okay, they sold us this lie that it would make the England national side really good straight away. It took 25 years for them to get back to a semi-final in the World Cup. They sold us the idea that it would improve the quality of football, which I personally think has declined. I personally think that. That's my personal opinion. They said it could keep ticket prices low. Well, that hasn't happened. Ticket prices have skyrocketed year on year. They get higher and higher. Um, Pay-per-view sports in this country hasn't worked as we were promised it would. It hasn't. And at the same time, viewership for golf, for cricket, rugby league is dropping yearly, and the subscription price goes up yearly. Hence why Sky had to completely rebrand all their sports channels this summer. Which I didn't understand why. Why can't Sky and BT just have the Sky network and the BT network on free to air TV, like Channel 4, Channel 5, BBC, ITV? They would milk the viewers then. They would milk it. BT Sport would collapse without the support of the main BT and EE. EE, the phone network, and BT are in a massive conglomerate, and that's the reason why EE was bought out by BT, was to basically prop up BT Sport. Because you take the mobile phone and internet away from BT Sport, it's dead. It's dead in the water. It's a sinking ship. They're leaking money out of it, and that was an EU decision. We needed more competition, um, which I really don't understand why free to air channels don't get given more games. I know Channel 5 have some of the rugby union um, league and cup matches on every so often, but they don't get given enough. They get them once a month when they should get them every weekend. That's my personal view on that. They only get the cricket highlights, give them the domestic test matches because their highlights package is very, very good. And I do think that the presenters they have and the commentators they have in the highlights package are brilliant. Please, love of Christ, ECB, get your head out your arse, stop taking Murdoch's money, and get it on free to air TV again because the sport will grow again, which we're trying to kill for some reason. So yeah, and I don't agree with the fact that Australian Test matches in cricket you can only get on BT Sport now because Cricket Australia, again being grubby, don't want to take Murdoch's money anymore. They want to take our money, British money, to prop up a struggling sport. Yeah, no, I was offered that as well, and I told them to stuff it. They also offered me reduced internet. I told them to do one because I looked at the contract, and after the initial entry period, my internet bill, even though I'd have saved money in the short term, would be higher than it is now for my grandparents, and they're on the top package. And we don't get BT Sport on that, even though we're meant to. Yeah, they're really cheeky. They are really naughty. BT. Initially, BT Sports would be free for all BT customers and free to air for the first year it was online to see the viewership. It was free to air for 3 days. It was free for BT customers for 6 months, and we were never given that option. So BT were very, very cheeky. They rack up the prices, and less and less people are watching it. It's a crap chat. It's a crap network. They bought all the shit that Sky didn't want. And the TV deal that the Premiership will have when this deal expires is not going to be as good domestically because BT have really fouled it up. Sky are losing customers as well. There's 18 million UK households refuse to get subscription TV, and I cannot blame them. And we're told Sky is better, and believe in better, and BT, get your sport here. Less and less people want it. The young people in this country don't want it. The BT Sport commentary teams are shocking. The rugby commentary, absolutely appalling. They can't even pronounce players' names right. They cannot. They really cannot get the players' names right. I don't mind the overseas, like the South Africans and the Australians and New Zealand commentators, because they actually do breed good commentators with a bit of passion. But it's the fact they can't pronounce names, or when they do try, they completely foul it up. The standard of journalism on BT is absolutely woeful. The Champions League and Europa League finals they stream on YouTube is the only good thing about it, and even then they no, I don't have Sugma. I don't. And even they then have to borrow presenters from Sky, ITV, and BBC. And Jake Humphrey is the worst sports presenter I think ever. He was hopeless at BBC. The BBC were not prepared to pay him a multi-million-pound contract. BT were. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know sod all about sport. You know, he can't even read off a bloody card, let alone an auto IQ. He's absolutely hopeless. Um, and the quality, I mean, the Europa League final, they weren't even at the ground. They were in a bloody crappy basement. No, I don't know what Sigma is, and I'm not really interested. If it's a streaming service, I'm not really interested in all those VPNs. Um, Not interested in it. Uh, Simple as. Honestly, as simple as I'm not interested in it. I have no interest in it. I don't use VPNs. A lot of them are unsecured anyway, and you have your details nicked and slug machine, but I'm not interested. I have no interest. Ha! Oh, Jonathan Pearce. I do think yes. He when he was on Channel 5 football, and occasionally and on BBC he's very good as well. And he covers the women's football very very well, very very well. Um, I think he's been a commentator though for a long long time. He's been doing it for 30 years. I think when he was on Channel 5, underrated commentator. Obviously, Channel 5 couldn't pay him as much as BBC or ITV. Um, uh, but he does have a passion, not just for football, but um, for you know um, all sport. I think football is his prime passion. He's covered World Cups, Euros. He's covered qualifiers. He's covered European football. I think um, underrated commentator. He could be the next John Motson in the fact that he could keep going for another 20, 30 years. Um, it's a shame that, you know, BT have screwed up what they had a prime opportunity to have a free to air sports network to nick viewers of Sky, show British sport free to air, and make a lot of money out of ad revenue. And because they decided to completely well, they had James Richardson on Channel 5. They did put it on Channel 5 for a couple of seasons. Um, and yeah, Channel 4 and Channel 5 used it. Channel 4 had the Serie A in the 90s and the early noughties. It then took a couple of years out, was put back on Channel 5, and James Richardson came back. And I love his knowledge of Italian football is second to none. It really is. Um, we get the Bundesliga highlights on ITV4. But I do think that again the I'm very surprised that the terrestrial TV networks, the commercial ones, ITV, Channel 4, and Channel 5, don't club together and go, right, we'll between the three of us, we'll set up a sports network alongside Premier Sports, merge with them, set up a sports network that's free to air, and take viewers from Sky and BT, because that's what Sky and BT are very scared of. They're very scared of that. They're also scared of online streaming. Um, Oh, good. I'm so glad BT Sport are losing rights for leagues all over the place. They don't deserve them. They are absolutely shocking. They're a rip-off. They're rip-off merchants. They're absolutely piss-poor quality of journalism. The fact they can't even hire their own commentators full time, they have to borrow them from other networks, is a shambles. The person the bloke who actually set up um, BT Sport, the guy in BT who actually came up with the idea of TV network, has been fired by BT because he's cost them hundreds of millions of pounds. Ligue 1 is in France, I believe. Please tell me it's in France. Please tell me it's in France. I'm hoping it's in France. Um, I'm assuming it's French. Be gone. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's France. Okay. Dear, 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 dear. You're done, mate. Jesus Christ. You subbed so you could literally. What a fucking idiot. Yeah, well. He subbed and then decided to keep being an idiot. It's a pity that my moderators aren't on tonight, but he'll probably come up with another pissing account. All he has done for me is help my view count and my view hours, which go towards, eventual remonetization. You're a moderator. There you go. If honestly, but back to the Serie A rights. Yeah, I'm honestly not surprised at all that BT Sport have lost the rights. BT Sport, they've really how they ever got the Champions League and Europa League rights as a sole rights proprietor. I didn't mind Sky and ITV having it because Sky were given the multi-choice viewership. You could get like 8 games in the group stage and choose what game you wanted to watch on the Sky button. And ITV were given joint rights with them. Yes, okay, ITV as time went on used to have games on both a Tuesday and a Wednesday night, and then it went to solely Tuesday or Wednesday. But that was competitive, and that made it interesting to watch and fun to watch. And the ITV were allowed to have all the English sides Champions League games and Europa League games, and Sky got the rest. I was totally happy with that. I think that what I will the only one out of those 3 games I will be buying is Red Dead 2. I'm not buying Black Ops 4. I'm not a big fan of World War 2, to be honest, and I was really disappointed with how that fell flat. But Black Ops, no, not after Black Ops 3. I will not be buying that. I'm not spending 50 or quid on a game that I'm not going to enjoy. FIFA, I don't buy any sports games anymore. They're all too generic from EA Sports. 2K are taking back a bit of the market space, but again, they're very generic as well. And Red Dead, I've been waiting for this game for 8 years to come out. I've been waiting 8 years for this game to come out. I'm not missing out on it now. Rockstar have put a lot of development into this game. Every single Rockstar studio has assisted in the development of the game. And since GTA 5 came out, it's been 5 years since that game came out. I've been waiting a long time for this release. FIFA 19, I'm sorry to say, but all the FIFAs have become generic over the last 10 years. They're all very generic now. They're all the same. There's no real change between, FIFA 18, FIFA 17, going back to about FIFA, I would say 2008, I think. There's been no real upgrade in my eyes. The graphics have got a bit better because the Xbox One or PS4's come out, but apart from that, there's nothing really different in the gameplay too much. It's still the same basic gameplay that it was in 2003. It's the same graphics engine it was in 2003. Nothing. It hasn't changed enough to make me want to go, I want to spend 50 quid on that. Black Ops 4, not after Black Ops 3 and Infinite Warfare. That's not getting bought. I don't even play World War 2 that much anymore. I haven't been on that for about 5 months. I'll still play Advanced Warfare, but as it comes to gaming, there's only one game I want to get this year, and that's Red Dead 2. Well, I will do a review on the other channel on that, my history channel. I do. I still play GTA 4 from 2007, 2008. So I do like Rockstar games. I've been playing Rockstar games since the original Max Payne came out in 2001. So for the better part of 17 years, I've been a fan of Rockstar and the games they make. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it as and the amount of effort and finance they put into the development. They could have released a DLC or an expansion pack for GTA 5. They haven't, partly because they put all the money into Red Dead 3. 2, sorry. GTA 5, they could have had an expansion pack like they did in GTA 4 with The Lost and the Damned and the Ballad of Gay Tony. They could have done that. Instead, they've just done little updates for the online, which you can debate whether that's good or bad, but they put a lot of money and development into this game. And 7 playable characters. You could not ask for more. 7 playable characters. That is something which we saw in GTA 5, sorry, with the 3 playable characters. 4 more playable characters for this game. That says this game is going to be massive, and I hope the free play map is good as well. I'm looking forward to free roaming on that map. I really am. I'm looking forward to the storyline. I'm looking forward to the the graphics, because the graphics are good. The adverts I've seen look good. The trailers look good. I'm really looking forward to it. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the highest grossing game of all time, because the 8 years of coming up the storyline, characters, development, gameplay evolution over the last major Rockstar installment, which was GTA 5. There's a lot going to be happening in this game, which will give away a lot about what's going to be in GTA 6 in gameplay, and in things like that. Because the original came out 2 years after GTA 4, and then 3 years after Red Dead came out, GTA 5 came out. So this could give a lot away what's gameplay mechanics are going to be in GTA 6, or if they do end up doing a expansion pack for GTA 5. But that is something that, yeah, I think a lot of gamers have been anticipating for a long time. I wouldn't be surprised if it smashes records for sales. I really wouldn't. I'm definitely buying it. Um, and I'm happy to spend the money on a game like that, because I know I can enjoy it for not just a weekend or a one-off. I could play that for months, months and months, and then finish the game, and then a couple months later go back and play the game again, because you can do the storyline differently, or you can play a character differently. That's what I like about GTA 5 and Red Dead, is you are sometimes given choices in missions where you can choose A, B, or C. That's what I'm looking forward to. Skyrim, yeah, no, Skyrim, yeah. I got Fallout 4, and I was underwhelmed by Fallout 4. I think Bethesda, there's too many bugs in their games. There's too many glitches, and some of their storylines, the side missions, are overcomplicated. They overcomplicate the storyline, or the storylines, and it's too long. It's too long a game. I think Skyrim, yes, there is some things about Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls series that I do like, but again, the side missions and the glitches, they do ruin what could be a brilliant game and make it a good game. But yeah, the Red Dead Redemption series, I love that. I've completed the original in 2 days. The last time I actually played it through, but originally it took me a good while to complete the game. It took me a good while to get good at it. I've completed Red Dead Redemption like 5 times. Just the main storyline. I'm not talking about all the side missions and all the strangers and freaks. I'm talking about the main mission, the main storyline. I've completed it 5 times, and I would happily get it again on backwards compatible off Xbox Live Store, just to play it through again. Because I gave the game the old 360 to a friend of mine, but I would happily play that game regularly. But it is a bit dated now, and some of the graphics are a little bit tired, because graphics have just kicked on, and gameplay mechanics have kicked on, and processing's kicked on. Oh, yeah, I used to love Football Manager, but I don't have the time for Football Manager. That's the difference. With my YouTube and my job, I still have a time. I could still have time where on a weekend I could play an hour or 4 hours a day, and still do my videos on a weekend, and then on a weekday go to work and do my YouTube. But I can balance it. I think as I've got older, I do game less, and as I'm having to commute further for work, whereas before I was literally working in the town I live in, now I'm commuting an extra, you know, 17 miles a day, and further afield. I just don't have the time or energy, because the time I have to get up in the morning and the time I get in and then doing this for you guys, I game less, but when I do game, it's more enjoyable, because I play possibly 2 days a week on the Xbox. I'm not on every night, and some people want me to be on every night, and you know, um, you can't be. Um, so there is that as an issue, but sports games on games consoles, I don't play them anymore. I used to, yes. Years ago, I would happily save up my money, and uh, buy buy a game. Why is my nose red? It's probably the lighting. I think it's the lighting from my laptop. Um, yeah, it's the lighting from my laptop. It's the way the light's hitting me in the face. Because if I tilt my head, it's not red anymore. If I angle the laptop differently, yeah, let me have a look. Yeah, it's the lighting from my laptop. It's the way the light's coming off the laptop. Um, the official release date is either October or November. I believe it's the end of October. I think it's October the 28th. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if that either gets pushed forward or pushed back, depending on pre-order sales and any last-minute editing they've got to do to the game. Because this is Rockstar, and they tend to sometimes overstep the boundary with language and content that the censors don't like in Australia and New Zealand, which has affected them before. I believe it is either the last week of October, first week of November. That's the release date. Other than that, I couldn't tell you. I think it varies from country to country. I think it's variable from territory to territory. But this is not sport. This is computer gaming. Although esports, there we go. Esports is a thing that some do say is a sport. Esports is a thing now. It's a difficult one. I think we've seen computer games. Oh god, I think the amount of years they've spent in developing and producing this game, it has to be. They put a lot of effort in. It's also, ironically, and this is something that is on fan fiction. You can take this with a pinch of salt. There is an Easter egg in GTA 5 that links into Red Dead Redemption 1, with the gravestone of the main character, Marston. Um, it's rumored that Red Dead and GTA are in the same universe. So I think there at some point they will try and link both GTA. John Marston, yeah, there is an Easter egg. You do find John Marston's gravestone in GTA 5. I have personally never found it, but others have. It's in a really obscure location in the woods, but you do find it, and that says to me that Rockstar are going to try and link the two universes together. Whereby I wouldn't be surprised if they have a Prohibition Red Dead Redemption 3 or something along those lines set in the 1930s or 20s, um, on the borderlands between Mexico and the US, where smugglers are smuggling booze and stuff through, and mafia type stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if they do like a crossover game at some point. I think fans would like that. I think gaming fans would like that. I think the wider public, I think, would like that if they were to casually game. Hardcore gamers would probably like that. Those who only buy certain games, like me, who only buy certain titles now, I would definitely like that. Yeah, that's basically what I think they're getting at. I think this is the prequel to Red Dead, much like Vice City was the prequel to GTA 3, um, and filled out some of the holes in the GTA universe. Um, this is the backstory to Red Dead, and then you had there was another game from another studio that got bought out by Rockstar that was also part of the Red Dead series, by purists. I forget what it's called, but there is a rumor going around that they're going to try and completely link the GTA and Red Dead Redemption universes in a game at some point. And if they were to do that, that would be brilliant. It would have to be set in the 1920s, maybe early 30s. And I think there'll be a homage to Last Man Standing with Bruce Willis, which is set in Prohibition in the Wild West. or on the border of Texas and Mexico in the late 20s, early 30s. That I think would be a fitting way to possibly either ending the GTA or Red Dead Redemption series, is to make a crossover. I think GTA as a gaming series, there's only so long they can keep making them. There really is. There's only so long they can keep making them. It's going to take longer and longer to develop a Grand Theft Auto, because they do base all the cities on real cities around America. They did start in London, so they do base them on real locations. And to get the playable maps bigger and bigger, that means they have to do more and more research. It takes longer to get the game dynamics and the game engine and the play engine and the graphics. There's only so far they can go with the current generation of consoles, and there's only so far console development can go before consumers can no longer afford to buy. And video games is a big industry, so I do think the GTA will probably finish GTA 6. If they do link that into Red Dead, that would be absolutely amazing. If they did a crossover, GTA Red Dead, a Red Dead Redemption Grand Theft Auto, that would be the ultimate crossover, I think. And I think that would possibly cap Rockstar as a gaming studio totally. And if they were to sell the rights to a movie studio for something like that, that would be pretty amazing as well. They did do LA Noire, so they have proven they can do historically accurate games as well. I don't think Bully 2 comes out. I don't think it was a good game, but I don't think it's as sellable and as well known as Red Dead and GTA, because they didn't market it as much. They didn't push it as much. That was more of a niche game. They didn't push it as much. And talking about marketing, this is where you could say certain sports, as we were saying before, aren't marketing the TV rights and the game overseas very well or outside the traditional market. So this is why rugby league is struggling, because they don't market it enough to the wealthier south of the UK. This is where rugby union is struggling in the north of the UK, because again, they're not trying to compete with what's there. But I mean, when I focus a bit more on the other channel, the History Boffin, I will do game reviews and we can discuss GTA, Bully 2, Red Dead Redemption, Skyrim. I bought Ready Player One, and this is where, you know, a lot of that kind of pop culture references comes into it. When I watched Ready Player One at the cinema in a secret showing, even though it's rated 12A, and is, you know, a decent film, most people in there were in their 30s and 40s. There were not enough young people watching that film. So the marketing of Ready Player One, great film that it is, it's a Spielberg film, so the ending's naff. They got the marketing all wrong, and that's where I think Bully, the original Bully game, fell a bit flat in sales, was they didn't market it as well as GTA and Red Dead. They just didn't. And Red Dead Undead as well. The Undead version, you know, the zombie version of Red Dead Redemption was pretty good. They nailed that pretty well as well. So if they were to do a crossover game, that would be pretty good. Infinity War, I've heard a lot about it. It's not a game that I can't believe we're going completely off sport and we're ending up on PC and console gaming. I can't believe we've gone down this route. This live stream is only going to last an hour, and we're going an hour and a half. I've heard a lot about it. It's not something that's in my game collection. Personally, I don't play as much console gaming as I did, and this all started partly with a question to do with you know, 3 games coming out this year, and one of them was a sports game, and I find that sports games are nowhere near as good as they were 10, 20 years ago. They're less exciting. They mean less. Mafia 3 was a 2K game. It was a bit too much like GTA, and I didn't enjoy it as much as GTA. I did have Mafia 3. I played Mafia 2 and Mafia. They're not as good. The gameplay mechanics are not as good. I'm not gonna lie on that. They're not. It just was not as good, and that's a shame, because, you know, it was a decent game. It was advertised very well on TV and in the cinema and on posters and on online adverts. They did advertise it very well. but it was good, not great. It's not a GTA 5. It's not a Red Dead Redemption. It's not a Skyrim type game. It's not a Fallout. It doesn't have that same kind of. It just wasn't as good. I'm still. Will I play it again? Maybe. Um, would I buy it again? Probably not. Would I buy another Mafia game? Probably not. It just didn't. I didn't enjoy it as much. I didn't get into it as much. Um, there was too much going on. Oh God. The Asian Games already has got its own scandal. The Japanese basketball team have had to send four players home for having sex with prostitutes. The Asian Games is also one of the most match fixed sporting events in the world. So you pretty much can guess who's going to win the medals before the events even start, and that's including if the player or the team or the player is injured in whatever sport. You know who's going to win the medal. There's a lot of corruption behind the Asian Games. Esports is a thing. It's computer gaming is obviously and console gaming is very popular in Asia, especially Japan and South Korea and Thailand and Malaysia. It's very popular with a lot of the young people, and in Taiwan as well. It's exceptionally popular in many Asian countries and in India as well. India and Sri Lanka, it's very popular. So I'm not surprised that they do have kind of like esports being there. Big money to be made. Big money to be made in tech kind of things. It's kind of uh, the future of possible some sports. Some sports are really struggling. This could be the future. Is more tech in sport. It's interesting though. But it's big. It's more to do with the money of it because the game developers and Xbox and PlayStation and the PC companies are big companies and they have a lot of money. Do you Would you do? I do have the History channel, the History Boffin. That is my second channel. That is, I will be doing movie and book reviews and gaming reviews on that because things like Ready Player One, this is social history here. This has got a lot of pop culture history in it. So yes, I will be doing that on the other channel when I get time. The other channel is literally a secondary thing to this. This is where most of my subscribers are and most of my video content. So yes, my second channel, the History Boffin, which I'll put in the comment section so you guys can see it. What I put in the comment section is my second channel, and you will find that at the moment I haven't got a lot of content, but I will be doing film reviews on it. I will be doing film reviews and game reviews. So that's my second channel. If you look in the comment section, in the comments, so feel free, to subscribe to that. And then when I get round to watching Ready Player One on DVD, even though I've watched it in the cinema, I will do another review on it because there'll be deleted scenes, there'll be documentary commentary and stuff like that. And I think it's the extended version as well with the deleted scenes actually in the film. I'll be able to do another review and say, look, on DVD, is it as good as in the cinema? Did I enjoy it the second time around? And I'll be doing that this weekend. I think Saturday morning I'll watch the film, do a review. I did find the ending in Ready Player One a bit pap. I will say that I did find the ending a bit too Spielberg. It was too neat. It was too fairy tale. Life isn't like that. Esports, no, it's big money. It is big money. Esports has been growing year on year for the last, I'd say, 5-6 years, really rapidly. But if you notice, TV poker tournaments are less. They're lesser on TV now. They had their peak, and then the interest started leveling out, and they weren't getting any new viewers. So it will reach a point where it peaks and it levels out. There's only so much you can do playing esports. There's only so many games that a developer can produce every year, and to make a game is exceptionally expensive. And if it flops, it will cost the developer and put the developer out of business, which has happened to so many games companies have gone out of business. I wouldn't call poker a sport. People call darts, snooker, and pool sports. But there is an element of skill in snooker, darts and pool, 8-ball pool. Darts is probably the least skillful game. You've got to be able to count, but they're classed as sports. 10-pin bowling is classed as a sport. That was discussed yesterday on a live stream. So I think esports, I think it's a gaming tournament in the sense it's computer gaming. It's a separate kind of thing. It's not a sport. It says esports just to attract sponsors and investment from sponsors. That's the only reason. Apart from that, it's a bunch of nerds in a massive warehouse sweating bollocks, not getting laid, playing computer games. It's pretty much what it is. Yeah, I do follow things on Twitch occasionally. That's part of the growth of esports is streaming services like Twitch and gaming channels on YouTube. There's a few gaming channels on YouTube I follow, like Jackie Fish and Pixelated Apollo, because of guys like that and the fact that they've been doing their YouTubing now for 6, 7, 8 years. Some of them, they've grown a massive fan base, lots of subscribers. They've made a lot of money, and gaming channels do have big followings, and they can get sponsorships. And the reason why they do call it esports rather than gaming tournaments is for sponsorship reasons. And you know that's what it is basically. It's good that also one of the teams that you support, it doesn't matter if it's in actual sport or in computer gaming or things like that, has won a title, and that's great. That's what being a fan is all about, is for the highs and the lows, and just being there as a community. I think that's what I think I enjoy about ice hockey is it's a massive community. And other sports are similar in the community spirit that they have when there's adversity in the sport. Other sports aren't. Football is one of those that doesn't have that sense of community anymore. It's so bitter and divided. But when you come to ice hockey or NHL, or wherever the sport is played, that is a massive family. It doesn't matter that Canada, Europe, US, Russia, when the Humboldt Broncos bus crash happened, what I saw online with people pledging money to the GoFundMe page and sending donations and thoughts and prayers and well wishing and doing charity games and then raising funds and showing their respect. It shows that ice hockey as a sport is more than a sport; it's a community. Even though the sport is brutal, it's physical. The players do sometimes try and kill each other. When something like that happens, how the hockey community, as in fans, players, coaches, commentators, ex-players, ex-coaches, administrators, clubs came around across the world. Says something about the sport that we follow and the sport that we enjoy watching and sometimes playing. It was humbling. And yeah, I did my jersey for Humboldt Day. I wore my jerseys. I wore jerseys all day that day. Rotated around because I was sweating like a pig, but I did wear my Humboldt jersey for Humboldt Day. I wore all my hockey jerseys for at least an hour that day. I rotated them around. So, and what happened there actually did bring me to tears. So, and I lived like 8,000 miles away, and I was bawling my eyes out, thinking, Christ, you know. But no, esports has grown, as I say, massively, and there's a lot of money in it. And of course, not everyone's going to agree with it having the word sport in its name, but that's how it's growing. It's how it's gaining the sponsorship, and they are building esports arenas all around the world. All around the world, they're building these arenas to host events and tournaments, and the more and more people pay to enter, the bigger the prize pot becomes for whatever game you're playing, whatever event you're playing in. And on Xbox Live and on PlayStation Online, Call of Duty has Call of Duty tournaments. There's online FIFA tournaments. There's every game has a tournament of the week that has an online. So it is a growing thing. More and more people are doing it. Call of Duty, for every Call of Duty release, they'll have a tournament at the end of each year, and they will invite people to go, and you can apply to go and play in esports tournaments. So it's a growing thing, and they're using their products to get you into the tournaments. And it's an occasion. I wouldn't mind going to see one of them. I wouldn't mind going to watch or participate in at least one. Um, Whether I'll be any good is another thing, but I wouldn't mind, participating in at least one or watching at least one, and then I can tick it off my bucket list. So I've done something, I've participated in something. Um, as a sports fan, there's a few um, places I want to go and watch games in a variety of sports and tick it off the bucket list. And some of them are, impossible, and others are very possible. It's sky's the limit. But yeah, no, I'm going to call the live stream a day in about 10 minutes. So I'll take a few more questions and then we'll wind it down, and we'll, we'll have another one later in the week. But we've had a lot of interesting topics come up tonight, and a lot about Scottish football. Ooh, uh, I think only the fact that only one player has actually died on the ice. A few have died afterwards with complications. There's been a couple have died since a game, sometimes in the next day or in the weeks or years after. I do think it is a brutal sport. More players have died playing football, soccer in my eyes, or football as I would call it, soccer as you would call it, and rugby union and rugby league. In fact, I think more football players, soccer players for you, have died on the pitch than any other sport. We've had cricketers die. One cricketer died a couple of years ago from a freak. I think it's more of a freak accident. I don't think it's luck or fortune. I think actually that's just a freak accident. I think if the sport was that brutal and was killing them, we wouldn't have the NHL. We wouldn't have the KHL. We wouldn't have the British Elite League. The sport would have stopped the sport a long, long time ago if it was that dangerous. I think with the introduction of helmets and the introduction of better body protection and the changing of rules, yeah, it's a brutal sport. But actually, ice does have more give than roller hockey concrete. I bet you. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if more people have died playing roller hockey in the street or on a concrete roller hockey arena than ice hockey. I think it is a brutal sport, but there's a reason why it's still played. There's a reason why it's actually probably one of the safer sports to play for contact sports, in the sense that only one fatality at the NHL. I think there's been 3 fatalities in total playing ice hockey ever that are recorded since the game that we know now has been played. But no, it is a brutal sport. It, you know, it's a vicious sport. It's dangerous, but at the same time, it is highly entertaining. It's one of the most skillful games you'll see. Even a goon has to have some skill at any level. He has to be able to skate and fight at the same time. That takes a bit of doing. I think the way the sport's evolved, the players are so powerful now. They're so quick. They're even the big bruisers who are considered slow by NHL standards are still way above anything I could even skate pace at. But no, it is a brutal sport. But I've seen games where in the UK, style of hockey is like the 80s, 70s and 80s bench clearing brawls of the NHL, just without the bench clearing brawls to a point, with hits and fights. And the style of game is more physical than North American fans would realise. If you were to come over here and watch a British ice hockey game in the Elite League or the National League that we have, you'll be surprised by how much more physical it is and how the skillful players aren't given the space that in the NHL they are. And yes, our rinks are Olympic size rinks, not NHL size rinks. They're that little bit bigger. So you would think the skillful players, okay, admittedly, yes, it's a lower level, but you would be surprised how little time on the puck they actually get. They get run over a lot. To be a skillful player in the British League, you've got to stand up for yourself. You will see some of the skilled players drop the gloves. In fact, I think on my local team here in the UK, I think every player apart from the goalies had, like, I think even the goalies had fighting minutes. I think every um, I wouldn't say Hayes a pure enforcer. He's got a little bit more. He's a shutdown player. His job is to be physical. To call him an enforcer or a goon is a misnomer because he plays more than a handful of games a season. He plays a lot. He plays most of the season. He's an integral part of the Panthers' physicality. You take him out, they're a pure skill team with not enough physicality and sandpaper. You need a Haley kind of bulky figure to knock people over. You need that kind of power player to rough up the opposition and put the skill player off their game and maybe reduce the effectiveness of a two-way power forward. I wouldn't say he's a pure enforcer. I wouldn't say he is. I think if he's saying Haley's a pure enforcer, it's basically saying like Bob Probert is like a Sidney Crosby centre. I think Steve Dangle is paid by Sportsnet. He's now contracted to Sportsnet. He's not like the hockey guy is anymore. The hockey guy is Shannon is brilliant at what he does. I might do a video on the hockey guy and why I like him. Actually, I think that might be a good video to do. Actually, the reason why I like watching Shannon, the hockey guy, do his stuff is he's not. Steve Dangle is a Maple Leafs fan. We get that. That's why he got the Sportsnet gig, is because he's a Maple Leafs fan who lives in Toronto. Since he's got signed up by Sportsnet, I don't enjoy watching him anymore. I don't enjoy watching his content as much. But I will say this: British hockey, even the goalies fight. They make Ray Emery look polite. They make Ron Hextall look polite. Some of the goalies have had lengthy suspensions. Um, so when I send those programs and those jerseys to the hockey guy, the one with the name on the back is my mate's older brother's jersey, and he was I wouldn't say he was an enforcer, but he could fight. Um, and there is battle damage on it from when he got involved in a fight. He broke a guy's face clean open, and blood's been all over it. And I still can't get the bloodstains out. So now Shannon has it, and it's got bloodstains down the front. That was a match-worn jersey in the late 90s. Um, it, it, and I think the Brit. I wouldn't say Haley is a full pure enforcer. He has a little bit more upside to that. He does a job. His job is to shut down skill players. His job is to be physical, and he will also look out for his more skilled players on his team. I wouldn't say he's a pure enforcer. I think that's basically like saying Bob Probert being a pure skill player who could occasionally look after himself. No, Bob Probert was an enforcer, but he had more. He was more than just a goon. He was actually a power forward. I'll call Haley an unskilled power forward or hard defenseman. That's the only way I could really see it. I don't see him as an enforcer. I really don't. Um, yeah, he may give away a lot of penalties. He's probably one of the most penalised players in the league because he's so physical. Tom Wilson though is just an absolute cheap shot artist. Um, the difference between Haley and Wilson is a cheap shot artist. He's like a more physical version of Brad Marchand. Um, and even Haley, he's a skilled player. If he was to come over here to the UK and play, he would be a first line player or first pairing defenseman because the gap in skill. He's made it to the NHL level and he's played a fair few. He's playing more than just a handful of games a season. He really has made it as an NHL player. The fact he's one of the least skilled NHL players is irrelevant. He's in the top 500 players in the world because he's playing in the NHL. I think, he's the most penalised player in the league. And there are other players who are penalised less who are far dirtier, who are full of cheap shots, and get away with a lot, who are very cynical. And I would class Sidney Crosby in that list, and Malkin. Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby get away with a lot of stuff that they shouldn't have in the past, and they don't get called for it. Yeah, I don't think Dorset is a pure out and out enforcer. It's a shame he had to retire with his neck injury. Um, but no, his role was a fourth line forward, shutdown guy, and yeah, he was playing quite well until he had to retire, which was a shame. But he had those seasons where he could put goals in and assists, and he could do a bit more than just fight and agitate. By Steve Dangle's definition, that makes Sean Avery an enforcer. Sean Avery was a prat. The real Sean Avery was a rat. So by Steve Dangle's definition for penalty minutes and winding players up, then Brad Marchand's an enforcer. I think, in my eyes, the best hockey players are all-round players. Pure skill players are great to watch, but when they can't stand up for themselves, that's where the enforcer role exists. If you are to watch British ice hockey, 90% of the players fight. Sometimes it just turns into mass brawls. We still sort of have those kind of more, I wouldn't say enforcers, but the harder guys who fight more than others. But you can't have a pure enforcer role anymore. That died in the 80s, maybe the 90s at a push, because the way the game has evolved in speed, you can't just have a guy who just comes on for 2 minutes to punch someone. They need to play at least 10 minutes in a game and contribute in some way defensively or offensively or both. And Steve Dangle, he's now basically a Sportsnet stooge. Since he got signed up by Sportsnet, I did watch his video on the 100 days of the NHL and the lead up to the NHL season last year. After that, his content is nosedived in quality because he's just a Sportsnet microphone. It's very biased videos that he does. I barely watch them anymore. I don't enjoy them as much as I did 6 months ago. It is Leafsnet. It is. Sportsnet is Leafsnet. And because he's a Leafs fan, but the 100 Leafsnet moment, yeah, the 100 Sportsnet NHL moments was a very good series. I did like that because it wasn't just Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and hard on for the Maple Leafs. It did have some other good pieces in it. The sad thing is that was his first series for Sportsnet. He's got like 4 channels, for Christ's sake. He's got his podcast channel, he's got his main channel, he's got his Sportsnet where he pops up and does videos on their Sportsnet channel, and he's got another channel. I think if I ever was to become that successful as a YouTuber, I would have to think long and hard. If let's say the BBC or definitely not Sky, but if the BBC or one of the British networks came up to me and said, "Do you want to do some commentary for us, or do some sports stuff for us?" I would have to think very, very long and very, very hard about it, and I probably would say no. I probably would say no. This is why I prefer watching the hockey guy over Steve Dangle by about a million miles. And post to post, you got the hockey guy, and then post to post, then Steve Dangle. Steve Dangle has gone from the best hockey YouTuber to the sellout, and I don't think I don't enjoy watching. The Verve, Richard Ashcroft. Yeah, Richard Ashcroft is an exceptionally talented musician. But a lot of these famous, well-known people have lives. This is what people tend to forget, and this is what people tend to forget about sportsmen. They're human beings. So if you look at what happened to Ben Stokes and you look at what's happened to Danny Cipriani, as 2 sportsmen, they are human beings. But unfortunately, these 2 guys have an issue with behaving, and they give other sportsmen a bad name. If Ben Stokes and Danny Cipriani were a football player, and for Sean Avery, a soccer player, and they did what those 2 did, people up and down the UK and across the world will be screaming, throw the book at them, punish them. Um, and it's the same for some musicians as well. So if it was the Gallagher brothers from Oasis, they had a period of time where they were getting into, punch ups and allegations of domestic violence and bullshit, and the media were going after them. If Ed Sheeran did it, would the reaction be different? I think there are certain sportsmen in the media who are getting a negative reputation, and some of them don't deserve it. Oh yeah, no, I do think the hockey guy. I don't think he will actually ever decide to go and become a journalist for a TV network. I really don't think so. He might. I hope he gets a guest spot on a radio show or something where they interview him or have him as a guest presenter or have him um, on the phone-ins. That I can see. I don't think it's in his nature. I don't think he wants to do that. I think he's doing his channel like I do my channel, like as a hobby. Except his hobby is now paying him a decent living, um, and he's very good at what he does. I mean, yeah, I haven't got the whiteboard up today because I got in from work. I watched the cricket highlights so I could do a video on that. I didn't in the end because I ended up doing something else. I've done a couple of videos. I just recorded this a couple of hours ago on two interesting sports stories that are happening at the moment in British sport, at least. And I'm on this, but because I've got a full-time job, I can't devote the time that he devotes because his YouTube is his full-time job. Oh no, the Gallaghers did. Both Noel and Liam were regularly in the press because of an assault allegation. This allegations of drunkenness, drug misuse, rock and roll, that kind of stuff. And the press really had a negative. They really kept going after them regularly. Whereas Blur, the rival indie rock band at the time, didn't have the same media scrutiny, even though they were doing exactly the same things. It's because the Gallaghers were so public about their punch ups. And bear in mind, Oasis and Blur, their peak. This is before social media. You could get away with a bit more then. You look at incidents now, you can't. So when Cipriani and Ben, especially Ben Stokes, all over social media straight away. The Tompkins brothers in rugby league a couple of months ago on social media, within a day of them getting knocked out of the Challenge Cup, two videos go up a week apart, which basically put them down, put their careers right in jeopardy. Both are now on the way out of Wigan. It shows there's a culture at Wigan that isn't good, and the fact that the club themselves suspended and fined one of them and fined the other, and then fired one of them says enough. Says to me that there are internal discipline problems with those players that wasn't made public, and this was obviously clearly the last straw for the club. You got to look at players like in Australia in the rugby league, like Sean Kenny-Dow and Kevin Proctor and Jesse Bromwich doing involved with cocaine, and how that and again the Conor McGregor. You just cannot get away with things like this now. And certain athletes and certain teams have more of a reputation than others, and the media go after them. They're out for blood. Conor McGregor, I think, has really been, his ego has got so big now, and his image is taken over. He's the richest loser in history. That's all I'm going to say. He made so much money out of losing to Floyd Mayweather. He doesn't have to fight again. The fact that there's still rumours that he will fight Khabib at some point is why I think Bellator, the other major MMA promotion, are currently considering legal action against him for some of the actions he's done at a Bellator event where one of his friends was fighting for a title match. And his antics at that press conference at UFC earlier in the year were I think he's not going to be able to compete for UFC promotion again. MMA is a sport that um, divides opinion, definitely. It's grown massively over the last 20 years, but I think there's an issue where it's starting to work out the same problems boxing and kickboxing and Muay Thai have, where you know, yeah, Deontay Wilder and Fury will fight. I am aware of that. Um, I think I think some of the issues that UFC and Bellator are finding now in MMA are what boxing and the various governing bodies and have had issues with for years. Um, there's only so far MMA can go. I think its popularity has peaked. I think the Conor McGregor fiasco, and that is what it is, has overshadowed the sport the last 2 3 years. Yes, he's helped grow the sport immeasurably, but at the same time, he keeps biting the hand that feeds him. It's very similar to Mike Tyson. Uh, Great at what he does, but then it's the other antics around that individual and the legal side of the legal ramifications of what they do, and some of that actually does more damage to the brand than helps it. Um, and there's MMA and boxing and kickboxing and Muay Thai have a lot of problems as well. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of alleged interference in fights where fights are fixed or thrown. There's steroids being used by Golovkin. Um, there's a lot going on. And Alvarez as well. It's another boxer. There's a couple of boxers who failed drugs tests. The amount of boxers who had issues with narcotics, with recreational drugs as well, primarily cocaine and speed. That's another one. I think I may not like Tyson Fury as a man. I don't like some of his personal views when it comes to women and homosexuals and religion. But I will say this: he didn't get caught failing a drugs test. He admitted to having issues with uh, illegal drugs and prescription meds, and he also admitted to having issues with his mental health. Straight up, he came out and said, "Look, I have issues with drugs, be it prescription or um, narcotics, and my mental health is shot to shit." And the way he came out about it, the way they hung him out to dry, that's a different thing. I think he admitted to it. Others have been caught out doing it, be it caught on camera or failing a test. He admitted to it before he failed the test. No, it was cocaine and amphetamines, I believe it was for him. But he admitted that he was abusing cocaine and amphetamines straight up. Um, is it good for golf if Tiger Woods wins all the time? No. I think you want to have a positive off away from sport image. I don't do a lot of golf videos on this channel. I really don't. I think Tiger Woods, what he did in the sport in his early days, before he was found out to be a womanizing philanderer, yeah, he did grow the sport. He was from a mixed ethnicity background, Filipino and black. Um, he was young when he burst on the scene and started winning, and he kept on winning. But his private life has overshadowed, and a lot of golfers have had affairs. Nick Faldo's done it. Ernie Els has done it. Colin Montgomery's done it. And these are some of the big golfers that I've watched when golf was actually readily available on British TV. Now it's all Sky and Rupert Murdoch. If Tiger Woods, on a golfing standpoint, was to compete and get close to winning another major tournament or winning a tournament, then yeah, he's had a comeback story. That doesn't grow the game though. Because of his colourful private life, it doesn't look good that someone who was always saying he was holier than thou. Um, I think he's not the man anymore. Because he's only got a couple of good years left in him because of the operations on his back. I think he's better than what he was. He's competitive on his day. I think he's in form. He's confident and in form at the moment, but he's not close to winning a major. Not close. I think he can't drive it as far. He can't, chip it as far. He just can't get the distance on some of his drives, um, and second shots because of the back injury. I think what happened with him off the course has damaged image Tiger. I think it's damaged his image and it's damaged the sports image because yes, other golfers have had affairs and been unfaithful, and had issues with alcohol and drugs and things. Um, but it's the amount of affairs and the amount of women Tiger Woods allegedly had sex with or slept with or had relations with, is not what, when you're trying to encourage young people into a sport and more women into a sport, that's not an image you want. So yes, his name will continue to be resonating with the greatest of all time because he is the greatest golfer of the modern era. I wouldn't say he's the greatest of all time, but definitely of the modern era because there's more tournaments to play, so he has more chance to win. Um, there's greater depth in golf now than there was, so it's more competitive. So there's so many good golfers right now. I think but Tiger Woods' private life has severely damaged the image of Tiger Woods and golf and the sport he competes in. Vladimir Klitschko, both Klitschko's, I think, are better role models, not just for boxers but for young people. I think both Klitschko brothers are far better role models for young people than Tyson Fury ever will be. It doesn't matter what sport they do. You've got to look at them outside the ring as well. One's got into politics, and he's trying to better his country and improve his country, which has gone through a lot. Ukraine has gone through a lot in the last since it got its independence from the Soviet Union. It's been an independent state since '91. So they do give back to the communities they're from. I think Amir Khan is a great role model for young, especially young Asian men in this country, where they don't have a lot of positive role models. And he's obviously of Pakistani Muslim extraction, and the Pakistani community, the young men don't have many good role models. To have um, um, a good role model in Amir Khan is good. He did have a bad boy image in the past, and he's corrected that, and he's grown up, and he still helps his dad. Also, he helps fund his dad's company. He helps with him. He invests in his dad's corner shop. His dad's now got a small chain of corner shops because he's invested in that, and they employ people. And Amir Khan's a good role model for any young person. Tyson Fury, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but he didn't fail a drugs test. He just admitted to it after the event. That's the difference. That's the difference. He admitted to it when he realised his mental health was shot and that he wasn't in a good place. He just came clean. And to be fair, should he have been drugged up? No. Does that mean boxing has an issue where its drugs testing isn't working? Yeah. That means that the drugs testing policy of the British Board of Boxing Classification and for boxing in general is clearly open to abuse. So Tyson Fury admitting that he had been on either performance enhancing or recreational drugs, that's not the issue. At least he was honest. The fact that the testers weren't testing him, or he managed to pass the test, says that the anti-doping regulations in boxing, be it both in the UK and around the world, are clearly open to abuse, really badly. And that raises questions about Alvarez and Gagolkin, that fight, where Alvarez failed several tests. Yeah, it was Alvarez. Gagolkin was like, I refuse to fight him. He's not clean. And then I can't remember which British boxer came out and said ban him for life. A British boxer came out. I believe it was Tony Bellew. Tony Bellew said any boxer who's using steroids or peptides or any kind of performance enhancer should be banned for life because they're going to kill someone. And I actually agree with that. I actually think because the the nature of the sport that they compete in, and this goes for kickboxing and then Muay Thai and MMA, so UFC as well. The nature of these kind of martial arts sports and these blood sports that they compete in. Yeah, a guy juiced up, um, he'll pack more pound per punch. He won't be able to last as long in the ring. He'll tire quicker because he'll have no core strength because he's pumping up his arms, and it'll because his cardio is burning more carbs and more calories. He'll have to, he'll burn out quicker. But in the short term, that power per punch, that Newton force going through your body, yeah, that's going to be more powerful. And yeah, you've got to imagine someone who's maybe who's got a 10% more power in their punch over a natural guy because of steroids. That's going to kill someone. Boxers already have issues with CTE and brain damage and dementia and depression linked with brain injuries. You get hit harder in the head, you're gonna be not very well. So yeah, I do think boxing. I mean, I've got a friend who has a boxing gym. I've got two friends who've got. I have two friends who run boxing gyms, and I'm debating whether to get back into training just to train out an old shoulder injury. And then if I could become a sparring partner for one of the other lads down there, so be it. Would I be fit enough to get in the ring with the amount of concussions I've had? Probably not. Would I be happy to do the pad work with them? Yeah. Would I be happy to box again? That's up to my doctor. But I've had a few too many concussions playing rugby and kickboxing to risk it for me. I will finish. I'll take one more question after this. David Hay. David Hay is full of gas. David Hay is full of a lot of talk and not enough walk. David Hay, at his peak, good boxer. Was he a great boxer? No. Tyson Fury is a good. Look, he won the World Heavyweight Championship. We're not going to deny that. He's admitted to his personal issues, which other boxers haven't until they're caught. He admitted before he was caught. He saw the writing on the wall and said, "Look, I'm going to admit to this." So there is that. Tyson Fury is not the most skilled when it comes to the use of the hands, but he's powerful. He's a powerful puncher. There's a reason why he was an undisputed world heavyweight champion. It's because he's a big boy. Would I pay to watch it? No, I wouldn't pay for a pay per view. I don't agree with even the terrestrial channels like ITV are now coming up with the pay per view, the ITV pay per view. No, I refuse to give Murdoch and corporations any more of my money. It's already known that pay per view boxing is losing viewers because a lot of people go to the pub to watch. When what fight was it? Was it Anthony Joshua or was it? Yeah, it was Anthony Joshua's last fight. There were more people down the pub watching it than at home because the pub, as was discussed earlier, has the Sky Sports subscription. More people. When I think it was it? Yeah, it was Joshua. Anthony Joshua's last fight. Everyone was down the pub. When I went to my mate's pub in near where I live in the next town down, he was the only pub in that town not to have the fight on the telly because he doesn't have Sky Sports or BT Sport. He only has Free Sports on the TV. So he didn't have the Anthony Joshua fight on. Every other pub in the town had it on. The town was absolutely packed. And all they've got to do is pay for the price of a pint and they get to basically watch a fight for free. That's why subscription for sports is so flawed. Would I like to see a Joshua Fury fight? Yes, I would. But I wouldn't. I don't like pay-per-view sport. I think it should be free to air. You get more fans viewing it. You get more people viewing it, and Rupert Murdoch doesn't get his money. Anything that actually means Murdoch makes less money is a positive. Joshua, I think, is the more skilled fighter, but Fury's got more weight behind the punch, and I think he's looking a lot fitter than what he was. He's toned himself up. He's got his hands back, the speed back, and he is, I think, slightly taller and has a bit more reach. It would be a brutal contest, and to have two British fighters going for a world heavyweight belt or going to compete later on for a world heavyweight belt is good for the sport. But at the same time, boxing's got a lot of issues. A lot of boxers have died the last couple of years young, and a lot of them is related to in the ring or in training. Um, yeah, the other channel, I because it takes more time to research videos and more time to get the board up and go through that, and um, it's more. It's going to be every now and then on the weekends doing videos for that channel. It's just the amount of time that I've got to put in researching, and because I have a full time job as well, it's difficult to balance it. And I want to balance it right, where the content is as high as possible quality, and what we discuss is of the highest possible quality, and also devoting as much time to the main channel because this one is we're about a third of the way to remonetization. So I want to get this channel remonetized. In case of a rainy day emergency, because to be remonetized would be pretty handy with extra cash coming in. Because the money I'm on at my new job isn't enough to survive on. It is enough to get by, but not to live comfortably. I would be scraping the barrel month to month to I could pay my rent to feed myself. I would have about not a lot of money to get by on. I would be scraping the barrel for paying bills and feeding myself. So to get this remonetized, I think is the goal. Because that extra, it doesn't matter if it's an extra £5 a month or £500 a month. That could be the difference between me having enough money for a flat deposit and having enough money to pay rent and still enough money and still have enough money at the end of the day to be able to go out, socialise, keep the bike on the road, you know, buy Red Dead Redemption 2. Literally, to get this channel remonetized could be the difference between me being able to get a flat, being able to, pay my bills, insure and tax and MOT my motorcycle, and not. Because at the moment I'm sort of stuck in limbo in my family's spare room, extended family at that, and hence why the limited space when the whiteboard's not up tonight, but the limited space I have in the limited studio space because the set is a whiteboard, a laptop stand, and me. Yeah, I'm 28 and I'm with my grandparents, so I'm stuck in extended family spare room. It is difficult. I'm not on enough money to unless I find a flatmate to split costs or a housemate. I am a bit on squeaky bum, but I live near London as well, so prices around here we're talking over £1,000 to nearly £2,000 a month for a one bed flat in some areas. I could possibly be lucky and get one for 500 at the cheapest, but it would be the scabbiest flat. So that's the issue I'm in. But that's why if this channel gets remonetized and I can get that extra 500 quid or however much a month, that would help me leaps and bounds. It really would. It would really mean I had enough to live decently and not have to worry about having to do overtime at work. Because that would be the only way I could possibly get by is if I did a load of overtime work every Saturday, and then I wouldn't have enough time to keep the channel going. So it is what it is. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'm going to head off now as well because I've got to be up in 5.5, 6 hours for work, and I'm a bit tired tonight. We've gone on for over 2 hours. I was going to call the live stream about an hour and a half ago. So I've gone on a bit longer than I thought, but there have been some great questions. We've had one troll who helped the view count and helped the view hours by being a troll. But yeah, that is what it is. Thank you very much for all the questions. I know we also talked about a lot about online PC gaming and computer gaming. And esports is a nice topic to look at, and I will look at esports, and I might do a video on esports because there are those who think it should be classified as a sport, and there are those who think it's a game, it's a gaming activity. But either way, it's a good social activity. Anyway, thank you very much, and I shall see you soon.